Okay. Good evening. It's 6:30 p.m. So we'll call to order this meeting and public hearing for the Dover Planning Commission. Just as a point of order for everyone who is here who is not a member of the commission, if you could please sign in on the attendance sheet in the back. I'll probably reply or remind everyone of that if we get more people coming here. In terms of organization tonight, the plan is Matt Bachler from Wyndham Regional, who has been instrumental in helping us work our way through this plan. And Matt, you certainly have our gratitude.
Absolutely.
We'll do a presentation kind of giving us an overview of the plan, the planning purpose, the purpose of the plan, the process, next steps, and timelines for us. Then we will get into a session where if anyone has any questions or comments regarding the plan. I did receive 2 email comments outside of that. We'll talk about the structure of that discussion once we get to it. I think a little bit on how many people we have here at that. Finally, if there are any other general questions or comments, then we'll get to that. And then the planning commission meetings, members will discuss any changes that were raised tonight in a follow-up discussion, and then we'll adjourn, and hopefully we're efficient with the use of time because it's a 106-page document. We will, just as one point of order, we did have a planning commission meeting. We will defer consideration of minutes of that planning commission meeting to the next meeting. And then we will now go on into the public hearing. Matt, as the first order of business, why don't we invite you to come up and give a presentation of this here.
Thank you. I think I'll stand here. So I'm sorry to have it back.
Sorry,
you guys.
Okay.
We know what you look like. Yeah. Might be zoomed in a little bit.
Unless you want to stand behind us.
Don't push back to the room.
Okay. There you go. That looks good. Did you mind advancing slides?
Yeah.
Okay. So again, I'm Matt Bachler with the Wyndham Regional Commission. So I'm a planner with the WRC. We were hired by the town of Dover to work with the planning commission on the town plan update project. The town received Thanks. The town received a municipal planning grant from the state of Vermont to help support this project. Tonight we're holding the required public hearing for the planning commission. So I just have a short, about a 10-minute presentation before we open up the hearing. Go to the next slide. So in Vermont, towns are allowed to create a town plan and update that every 8 years as required by state statute to help guide the community's future. The first component of this is looking at existing conditions in the community, trends, changes. Dover's town plan was last updated in 2016. So we were also looking at what's happened in the last 8 years since the plan was last done. And through that process, we're starting to identify areas of concern and opportunities for the community. The next step is to define kind of the broad goals for where the community wants to go. And then you identify key action steps a community can take to get from where you are to where you want to be. And usually that's in the form of zoning changes, public investments and new types of infrastructure, changes to public programs or new funding programs. Next slide. So town plans are meant to be comprehensive documents. They cover a range of different topics. Under state law, a town plan is required to cover all the topics on the screen here. So land use, economic development, natural resources, community facilities and services, housing, transportation, energy, recreational resources, historic and cultural resources, and flood resilience. So it's covering a lot of different topics that impact community. And also in the town planning process, we identify where these different topics overlap with one another. So land use and transportation, there's a lot of overlap in those 2 areas, for example. Next slide. So just to give you a sense of the planning commission's role in this process and the select board's role. So the planning commission is required to work on the town plan and update the plan as needed. They are responsible for doing the public engagement and public outreach component. They're required to hold a public hearing on the draft plan, which we're doing this evening. And then they vote to approve a plan and it gets submitted to the select board. And then the select board has an opportunity to review the plan, make changes. They hold a public hearing as well. And then ultimately it's the select board that adopts the plan. Next slide. So just to give you a sense of the process up until today. So the town worked on a municipal planning grant in the fall of 2022. They received that grant in March of 2023. And following that, we did a update of community profile data. So looking at population, housing, economic conditions, and shared that and reviewed that with the planning commission. The planning commission previously too had done a community survey to gather public input. That was in 2021, 2022. So we also reviewed that and kind of looked at some of the main takeaways from that survey. We held a public kickoff meeting in June of 2023. And then from that point on, from July of 2023 to January 2024, the planning commission was meeting usually twice a month to review each of the sections of the plan, identify areas to be updated. Wyndham Regional drafted updates and reviewed those with the planning commission. So we covered a lot of territory during that period. And that got us to a final draft of the plan in January of this year. And we had a public comment period of 30 days up until the public hearing this evening. Next slide. So I'm not going to go over every single change that was made to the plan just because a lot of updates were made, but I just wanted to kind of provide a summary of some of the updates to the 2016 plan. So as I mentioned, we updated the background data, so population, housing, economic conditions, kind of what's changed in the last 8 years. We identified some areas of concern. Some of these were in the 2016 plan. Some of these are new areas of concern. And these are based on looking at those existing conditions and based on what we heard at the public meeting and in the community survey. So concerns around demographic trends, Dover's population. This population in the state of Vermont is aging, so that has implications for how we provide for housing, transportation, services for our population as it ages. Housing is a concern here as it is across the state. So just lack of affordable housing, especially for those in the local workforce. How do we provide more housing? Short-term rentals is another area of concern. And I know, since we started this project, the Dover Select Board is looking at a possible short-term rental ordinance. So that is being considered separate from this project, but that's something that came up in the planning process. Just the availability of groundwater for properties with private wells. There are often times where there's low water supply, so concerns about the long-term viability of groundwater supply. Continued concerns about safety on roads, especially on Handle Road and Route 100 in the Mount Snow area. And then just the need for reinvestment and redevelopment for commercial properties on Route 100. And so we looked at opportunity in terms of housing. We looked at opportunities for more residential development within existing neighborhoods. There are vacant lots with potential for infill development and additional subdivision within existing residential neighborhoods. We identified the opportunity to increase density for residential uses on Route 100 because there is wastewater available public wastewater on Route 100, and you have access to public transit, services, retail in that area. Those would require changes to the zoning bylaws as a next step coming out of this process. And we do want to continue existing policies that protect natural resource areas and a lot of what defines the rural character of Dover too. So how do we focus growth in appropriate areas and protect the rest of the community from development? You know, one of the things that came up in this process is just one of Dover's assets is you have really strong recreational opportunities. In addition to Mount Snow, you have a lot of public recreational facilities, and that's something the town is invested in. And continuing on with that, with expanding their trail system, the Horace Hill Recreational Area project, and this really helps build on your wintertime recreational economy to have year-round recreation. Just in response to the concern about groundwater availability, we tried to strengthen the language in the town plan about pursuing a municipal water system as a possible next step to explore. The next slide. So I just quickly wanted to look at the proposed land use map. So this is a component of the town plan. This is just showing general land use patterns in the town, which is a basis for zoning. Generally, the proposed land use map is the same as the 2016 plan. We did highlight an area just to the west of Route 100, south of Westover Village. That's kind of the darker yellow. Has an area where you could have more residential development. That's an area where you already have existing residential neighborhoods. So the goal is to focus more of that housing growth in the residential districts, which is the darker yellow color, and then the commercial district on Route 100, which is the kind of the pinkish color. The light green conservation area is where the town requires a minimum lot size of 27 acres. That's your highest protection area. We're not proposing any changes to that. And the productive residential area, which is the kind of the darker greenish brown color, that is a 5 acre minimum lot size, and that's where you have a lot of your lower density residential and some agricultural uses too. And so proposing to maintain that as is. So really trying to focus growth in those residential districts and Route 100, and then preserving the remainder of the town. Next slide. And finally, just looking at areas for bicycle and pedestrian improvements in Westover. So the town, Handle Road is a town road, so there are opportunities for the town to look at improvements on Handle Road to improve safety. Route 100 is a state highway, so there will be a need to work with the state on if there is the ability to make some changes to the design of that roadway to improve pedestrian and bicycle safety. And then in trying to encourage more development and redevelopment on Route 100, that would require some zoning changes. So looking at residential density, making sure that you are allowing for the types of commercial uses that you want to see. Related to that, if the town pursues a public water system, you have public wastewater on Route 100. If you had public water too, that could help support more redevelopment along Route 100 because that is needed for commercial uses. Again, that's a very brief overview of some of the highlights and some of the things that we discussed the most through this process. As Patrick said, it is a 106-page document, so I'm not going to read through the whole document. Just to give you a sense of what the next steps are. So the Planning Commission is considering public input during the public review period and at the public hearing this evening. We are asking for comments to be submitted by this Thursday at 5 p.m. And then the Planning Commission will consider comments, decide if they want to make any changes to the draft plan, and then send it to the select board. The select board is tentatively scheduled to hold a public hearing in May, but that will depend on when the planning commission wraps up their work. And then the select board would consider adoption of the plan, and then you move to plan implementation. And the plan includes a pretty extensive plan implementation program for ways to implement the different goals and objectives in the plan, and who's going to be responsible for those different action items. So that's included in the plan. So that's an overview of the process that we went through, and next steps as well. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Patrick.
All right, thank you, Matt.
Yeah.
Just for the sake of good order, does anyone have any questions of Matt or any comments of Matt? Or we let him sit down? Okay, Matt, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll move into the into receiving any comments or questions on the document. There's not a lot of people here tonight, but I think still for the sake of good order, we'll go by chapters. So if anyone has any comments or questions regarding the various chapters, I'll just go through them in order. There are 14 chapters here. So if I could ask you to refer to something if you do have a specific question or comment, please point us directly to a page or a section so that we know where to mark it, so that as we process these comments, do it in fashion. We'll do this by Robert's Rules of Order. Please raise your hand, be recognized, give your name, and tell us whether you're a resident or second homeowner or just someone else who cares about Dover. Okay. We'll go on then to the first section. We have chapter 1 is an introduction, which gives a lot of background information. We'll not expect any comments, but does anyone have any questions or comments?
Hi, my name's Kevin.
Oh, stand up, Kevin. So
Speak up. My name's Kevin. Let's go over. Just reading through it, first paragraph, it seems like it's missing the final sentence. You mentioned that Portugal was created out of a grant and promise for William Ward, but never mentioned that South District of Portugal later incorporated the town of Dover.
Kevin, which paragraph we use?
The first one, history.
Oh, page 5. And can you repeat your comment again?
My comment is we mentioned in this paragraph that William Ward of Newfane was granted a parcel of land. He never wanted to say that later the South District of Wardsboro became Dover. Okay, in 1810, it was incorporated.
Okay, great, thank you. Any other comments on chapter, that's beginning of chapter 2, actually. Did anyone have any comments on chapter 1? Okay, opening it now to chapter 2, subject to having accepted Kevin's comment. Great. Moving on to chapter 3, which is the economic development chapter. Are there any comments to this chapter? Great, thank you. Moving on to chapter 4. Land use. Actually, I'm going to pause before we go into chapter 4. I did receive a written comment by email in chapter 3 from John Hannon. And he referred to an item on page 15 under Trails and Recreation, where there's a clause, there's a statement. Past plans had called for the expansion of the Valley Trail south of Route 100, but due to cost increases, this is no longer being pursued. The priority is to extend this trail north toward Mount Snow. There is a detailed long email that we will attach to the record that includes quotes from several other people, apparently from a meeting or a discussion they had with several other members of an organization called the DVPSA. I think it's a Deerfield Valley Pedestrians Organization. Essentially, what their request is that they would like us to consider retaining the priority on extending the Valley Trail south to the town line. So we'll read that into the record. Yes.
My name's Tracy and I own a commercial building, right? Past where that flying gears,
Okay.
the bridge, and have a lot of information on that too. And I also would like that to be revisited as something that can get done, because there's times when I just wanna walk to the town office. To pay my taxes or something, and we just literally can't walk on that section of the road, because it's guardrails. Two lanes.
Great, okay. All right, thank you. And 4 comments just for we will take in comments and then the commission will discuss it and ultimately it'll be a decision of the select board with priorities and establishment.
That's so just because I was mentioned, I'm John Hannon, I'm a homeowner.
Okay,
Next to the bridge, and so I get to see everything that was on there, I had no idea it was just there, but I think what I would like to see in the report is just, even if we don't have a solution for the problem, I think we should address in that area, and it's not just the bridge, it's also just the general common traffic running through this other towns. It's actually telling me.
great, thank you.
I'm gonna chime in for just half a second. We may need to clarify a section here, but we've had a discussion about having some type of pedestrian walkway all the way from the town line, all the way through to Mount Snow. So perhaps we need to look at that and expand what we have on paper to make sure that's covered. But we did discuss that. We did recognize that it is an issue and we do want people to be able to walk on 100 safely.
Yes, I agree that.
Okay, great. All right, did anyone else have any comments or questions about chapter 3? Thank you, great comments. All right, moving now to chapter 4, land use. Any questions or comments? None. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, Kevin, please go ahead.
There. 4.3 stations out, station 4, it's about the. East Dover and West Dover. Village, designated village centers. It just seems to be wise for the plan to have language in it. Would give us the ability to have a village center here at Dover Common. So that we can have grant money for seeing doors and windows, checking water, sparkles, and EV stations. It just opens up a whole host. If you don't put language in saying that Dover would pursue a village center, then the plan has to be amended later. It's a bigger process. You don't have to do it, but if you put the language in, you can move forward later. And it's significant. All right, Dover.
Vicky?
Vicky Capitani, president. I think we looked into that when we were revisiting, and there are some things that this particular location does not qualify for, in terms of being a village center, but it doesn't mean that you can't write it in there and say that we can look at pursuing to. Because like ED 10 is fantastic here, it's plenty of parking. So I think that there were some hurdles to potentially doing that, but I think it's something to try to.
Great, thank you. Sarah?
Sarah should be resident. I just want to confirm, in looking at the map, it looks like we're adding a district on the southernmost part of the that isn't a motion.
Tabby, can you respond?
Yes, that section is pro zone,
Tabby,
right?
can you,
Oh, sorry, Taffy Friedman, zoning administrator. That section and in that specific segment is zoned as a pro zone, and there is really very little to no residential there. It is all commercial properties. It is my belief that it was not.
I'm just asking, we are.
Yeah.
Right, so.
Correct.
Yeah, so then it needs to be rezoned to fit the use that is ongoing there.
okay. Any other questions or comments? Great, fantastic. Moving to chapter 5, which is the natural resources chapter. Questions or comments in this section?
I have
Yes.
section, page 20. It's not. That is constant, and it's in the middle, second paragraph, like, well, we're halfway down.
Yep.
It's Dover comment, there's no Dover comments.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Great, thank you. Moving then on to chapter 6. Yeah, here. Which is community facilities and services. Any questions or comments to this chapter? Vicky?
Under the town governance one on page 1.
Yep.
We do not have an administrative system at all. She's in the second one. Do not elect any listers, that's in the last one. In the other, don't appoint all the people in the next paragraph, hire most of them, we do appoint some of them. So I will send a clarification. Rob, finance officer. Let's do the assessor. We do appoint. Planning commission and other commissions, so
Great,
I will recap the whole situation.
thank you. Thank you. Any other questions, comments, or clarifications?
Chapter 6.
Chapter 6.
Yeah, the page 48. 6.11, objectives, policies, and for water system. I just think I'd like clause in there. Making sure we don't your existing. Don't know you say pursue. Consider you're going to do it. I just want to make sure that we don't compromise the existing water supplies. So good. Kind of worded like pursue a municipal water system without, destroying existing supplies.
So can I ask for clarification? So you would not, you're suggesting that, for example, if someone has a well in an area where there's a municipal water system, you wouldn't affect that, or I just want to make sure.
No, I'm saying Dover was to go out and drill the mammoth wells, 800, 1,200 feet deep. Maybe the people that had 300, 400 foot wells are going to lose their water. They're going to be compromised. So it's great to have this full water supply, but I think it's also important to make sure we don't ruin it for people that have it already.
Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, isn't that coming down from the state that we need to start pursuing that?
It's not, there's there's a separate issue here, the PFAS issue. That the town is working on, but that issue about bigger, broader municipal water supply, that's not being required by the state.
Thanks. Vicky, you look like you wanted to say something.
No, I guess other. But I also think that maybe I do have something to say. Are you talking town-wide, watershed-wise, for the municipal water system? Or the in the North Branch Water District, and or you were just thinking about East Dover as well?
I think what we were proposing within this was to consider the scope, the breadth, the coverage, the feasibility. We haven't really gotten that far. I would submit that probably, Kevin, for example, your question, your concern would be wrapped up into that.
Maybe we change the word,
like that.
change the word from pursue to consider. I honestly thought that started from a state comment that we needed to do something for municipal water in order to qualify for something else. I could be completely wrong on that thought process.
Hold on. Sarah, did you?
I have an objection to change.
Okay.
Pursue could lead us to an answer that it's not feasible, correct?
And I think taking consideration of that, don't want to devastate someone else's. Search should be maybe stated in here, but I would not go back to consider it for decades.
Okay. Okay. Tabby, you wanted to add something?
Yes, just in response to Pete's comment, there are some programs and initiatives that the state has that require both sewer and municipal water to be qualified. But we as, let's say, once we get into working on the bylaw, we can state that we will follow the state suggestions for these various things. And work in some either regulation or testing required to prove out that there is enough water. The state's concern seems to be that there is enough water coming in and going out to support some of the density questions that they're raising. So if we say, okay, we will match the state's vision for allowing XYZ for density, if it can't be supported by the water available, then it's not going to happen. And when we go into that detail, we can be very specific about what is allowed, but I think that is where the idea of the state mandating it. There are grants that we can't get at this time, but we may be able to work with that to say we can prove out the feasibility of the situation.
Okay, thank you. We'll talk about that. Consider all the comments. Right. Thanks, Ken. All right, other comments to this section or this chapter 6? Yes.
On page 45. It is second paragraph in the bottom. The last line completely needs to be stricken from it because there is no ambulance in West Oak.
I'm sorry, guide us again.
Okay, page 45.
Yep.
Second paragraph at the bottom. ER has one ambulance station in Westover. That is not the situation. So that whole sentence and the ER is funded. Yeah, that's all. That's it. That sentence needs to go.
Just that one sentence.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other questions or comments to chapter 6?
Under on page 46, under 6.8. I like how senior citizens can get their free transport pass, which is the last paragraph. They still have to pay $1 per bag, which I think is an important point. So last paragraph, next to last sentence.
Yeah, so it's they get the free pass, but they still have to pay $1 per.
Well, I probably wouldn't put, I would put a nominal fee, because
Okay.
if it changes over time, you don't want it in the plan.
Well, let's
I'm just saying, we may need to rework that
work. Right.
to say present or something.
The senior pass is not free.
It's not. How much is it?
I was on the town website.
Okay, we'll correct this.
I circled the whole
The
paragraph.
point is, we'll take a look at this. Thank you. Yep. Mhm.
Right, how fast. And it's right, second paragraph.
Got it. Yep. Thank you. Any other comments to chapter 6? Fantastic, thank you. Moving on to chapter 7, which is housing. Comments to the housing chapter. Yes.
Here, that's back there. And it's the earthly trying to place the loan. No, nothing in my money range. And so anyway, I just wanted to throw my story in there. I've been unable to get back to live in East Valley. Because they're out of college, they're done. And so yeah, I guess page 52 and the whole short term that I feel is really blocking out local people that work and have businesses here
are just unable to live here.
So I'm gonna chime in first, if you don't mind.
Go ahead. Yeah.
I've been singing that song since I got on the board. My feeling is that short-term rentals totally destroyed the inventory available to the average person. We are very, very focused on workforce housing, making it affordable for people who work here to live here. And I truly believe that sooner or later, we as a community will have to put our foot down and say, this is what we're doing. And I'm not looking to wreck somebody's economic plan for their investment, but I am looking to protect this community.
Sarah.
So Shadi, one of the things that we know about a substantial portion of short-term rentals is that they would never convert to a long-term rental property because homeowners are using them part-time, renting them part-time. So they would not, by abandoning the short-term rental of that unit, you would not create a long-term rental opportunity. You would simply have a homeowner who now couldn't afford to keep their property because they offset their expenses by having short-term renters in for, holiday weekends or long, or months here and there. So I agree that we need more housing. I don't know that just going after the short-term market is really going to be the solution. Because I think a lot of the short-term rental properties are that would never convert to. We had a meeting up here. And a lot of people short-term properties say, I used it part-time and I let other people and I rented part-time. So I'm not gonna stop using my property. So I'm not gonna create a long-term rental property by giving up my short-term rentals.
Which I understand, but on my block alone, Upper Highlands, we have at least 7 properties that are Airbnb. Of those 7, at least 5 of them
I'm not saying
are just they were purchased for the purpose of being an Airbnb. My next door neighbor uses his house during the summer and rents it during the winter. I get that. And when I came here for a seasonal rental, I was one of those people who came to Mount Snow in a share house situation, not really looking at disturbing that market. I am looking at the Airbnb model specifically, where you have people coming into our community who don't understand what we're about, that take advantage of the services and don't really bring anything back. So that's really where I'm seeing, and I would guarantee you that if it was not as profitable as it is, that at least 2 of those houses would be back on the market and be available to other people.
So,
That's
so I think what I'll summarize is this section reflects a lot of deliberations like that.
Yeah.
And reflects kind of where we've had to draw some lines and establish some priorities. This is gonna be a moving target for everybody. So I don't think we're gonna solve that tonight.
Do you know that?
I know that.
Julian. Well, yes, it's the work. May of. But. For. Fact that there's. To that. It's like. Housing to and. Making it. Making residents unable to afford not only to rent but to purchase. So.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments? This is a very difficult question. All right, chapter 8, transportation. I received one email comment on this section from, I'm not sure I'm going to pronounce the name correctly, Keith Kito or Keto, K-I-T-O, who represents group of Deer Creek owners, and they have asked specifically that we consider specifically creating pedestrian corridor when we look at the pedestrian corridor along Handle Road, connecting Deer Creek to either the Sundance or Corinthia base lodges. And I acknowledged his comment and said we would take that into our discussion here, but that it might be covered by our overall discussions regarding what we're doing. The road needs to be agreement. So
Does this apply to a specific acres?
it was a general comment, I guess I should follow my own rule. Thank you. It was,
Probably 67.
yeah, well, he had
Part
it,
in there.
yeah, he had it there, but it was also, it's mentioned several other times in this section. So it's really just, there's a whole discussion of Handle Road. Under the pedestrian and bicycle pedestrian infrastructure section 8.2. And on page 67, the 68 policy 2.1 promoting the needs of pedestrians and bicyclists when considering local road projects. So I would put it under those two.
And even if you go to 2.3,
Yep.
Letter C.
Yep.
I think we need to expand what we've put down there, because originally when we discussed this, it was basically coming Valley Trail, hanging a left into Corinthia, and then possibly working with Mount Snow to create a pedestrian walkway all the way over to the main base area in order to get more people coming to Mount Snow. But in all fairness, if you think about the winter and the number of people from the Mountaineer who are trying to walk somewhere, or people trying to walk back to Seasons, I think that this is a very valuable point of clarification that we might want to just specifically talk about Handle Road all the way to the Sundance Space Lodge as an item of consideration.
Becky,
I'd like to add on that.
could you give everybody your name? Yeah.
Being the director of staff, I would like to see it go right past.
Right.
We have the only senior building with no walk. It does not make sense to me. But that's just my 2 cents.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, Handle Road, class 2 road, so state also has jurisdiction there, so don't you really have to work with the state to solve the problem?
Agreed, but I think we need to articulate that we want to cover that whole area and work with the state to make that happen.
Look at your action plan, should they more than just Travis, so it should say state.
Yeah,
Got it. Any other comments? You got another one?
Yeah, there was some conversation. Page 62nd paragraph, on track to Overville Road.
Page 60, second paragraph.
Yeah, talk about the speeding, vice versa, bringing signage to stop. Pulled over Hill Roads in class 2 road to it. Probably a lot of traffic on that road. Just seems that it might be appropriate to request more patrols on the road as well as signs down not to speed. And following that point, I wonder if there would ever be consideration of straightening Dangerous Corner and Taft Corner with the fatality last year. I think it's been 4 in 80 years to my lifetime. It's just, I mean, we look at it today, you can see what people bang off every winter, guardrails.
And where's the location?
just before the transfer station.
No,
He's talking.
Oh, you're on
Way
the other side?
Where's New Bank?
Oh.
No, over the.
On the right, in East Door Village. Very sharp, where it is, you've got now flashing lights saying 8% grade and trucks use over here. Because that was 2 sets of flashing lights.
It's right at the intersection where Taft Road comes.
It's
down.
very common. It's, yeah.
Perhaps a quarter mile along the fire station.
So your specific proposal is to.
So
consider-
really look at that, I know I've mentioned to town officials in the past that the town actually owns the land. Where that could be straightened, so it would have to be repurposed, rezoned. To straighten it, and then straightening the road for a runaway truck, which eventually is gonna hit something anyway, but I don't know. But it's.
So can I summarize it to say, consider options to reduce reduce the curve or improve the safety of that intersection or that corner?
I would like it looked at, just consider it to start.
Great. All right, other comments to this section? Fantastic, okay. And moving on then to chapter 9. Energy. No comments, great. Moving then on to chapter 10. Community resources. Sure. Well, ask the question. Please. We need to hear you, we need to hear you.
What was the question?
Windmills are
Yeah,
where it is, and most likely would be a conditional use and the structure. But it would be looked on as environmentally good use. It's still, it's structured, it had to be reviewed.
Nick. Any comments on chapter 10, community resources?
Historic resources,
Page.
I guess the chapter starts on
Page
page 80. In particular. Written there, I just in my spare time, spend a lot of time hunting down and investigating Dover's historic research. There must be 6 cemeteries that are ancient in places where civilization once was, but isn't now, and there's really no mention of trails that go to them. They don't know how to give them recognition, but Ski Hill, all the halfway, all the whites. These were all legit closed cemeteries, very rich in culture. And for a lot of people, going out for school or hike, finding something at the end of it. Wow. Don't know if that's something that could be bothered or mentioned.
Okay.
Abby?
My thought would be is following along that, we could do a map or a map overlay of historic cemeteries in Dover and how they connect to the trails and provide that. It would simply be, an addition or appendix or whatever will make something available to people who might like to go and discover this and follow the historic trail. So that would be fairly easy to build out a map for.
Right. Vicky.
Activity. Speaking of cemeteries, all of those cemeteries are privately owned. They're all and cared for by aging people who are not going to be able to live for much longer. We have been approached by the Dover Cemetery in the center of Dover, that East Dover. I am the treasurer of Dover Cemetery, which is on Holland Road here. And then there's the Hamlin Road one and Mountain View, and then one contact conferences. They're all privately managed, fundraising by private organizations. The town, and I have spoken about this at least a couple of public meetings. The town really needs to consider taking over the care of these aging cemeteries. At Dover Center, here on Holland Road, we do have some lots. There are covenants that say that only East Dover residents can buy a lot. There are lots on the one off behind Cabot Conference House in the center of West Dover. I don't know about the others. There's no lots available down in East Dover Cemetery. I don't know about Mountain. But I think that's something, if you don't have a cemetery commission, there's a lot of it. And I think that adding something about the town should look at appointing a cemetery commission and discussing things with all these individual, these privately owned cemeteries to try to bring them, there's a lot of bad state of repair. And there's just no money to do that kind of, and it's hard work to straighten stones. It really is something that we, because people don't care as much about cemeteries in some ways as older people did and took care. And most of the people in our cemetery, there's no living heirs. They're not here anymore. It's going to be donate. So there's no, we have our financial burden on these things.
Are there, one question for clarification, you say they're privately owned or privately managed, so are they some cemetery association that was formed for each? Okay,
Yes. We have covenants and all that.
right,
So
okay.
yes.
Okay.
I think it's just would be forward thinking because we're at a point, a turning point.
Yeah.
Just following, up what you said, believe state statute allows resident or any person to request permission to visit a cemetery, private property, and 59 select board has to right.
Oh, we don't limit anybody, can't go, and anybody can stop them.
No, but they're on closed land.
It's not. It's the
Okay,
gates.
okay, yeah, well, we get the idea.
Um, And those in town do maintain.
Right.
Ones that are abandoned. As.
Okay.
Also, maybe
Right.
lists of abandoned.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Town. Does take care of residents would visit.
I know the David is listening to.
Okay, so we can, to summarize that, we can consider the formation of a cemeteries commission to basically work through all of that and understand how we got there.
Those guys have.
All right, great. All right, any other comments to that section? Okay, chapter 11, flood resilience. Things Henry. Fantastic, on to chapter 12. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, so.
I realize this is just. Like. And the town, we don't want things.
Yes.
Well,
You can't.
that's hard. Yeah, it's my understanding, Matt, Nod and Tabby, that all this will be available online and there'll be links to some.
And then, for instance, you'll, Tabby's zoning administrator, you will be able to do a blowout of those embedded images of those maps and zoom in. There will also be a link to the flood map resource where you can get even more information about any particular, you put in your address, do any sort of detail and look into that.
Right. All right, on to the last chapter, which is the implementation program, which is the table at the end. There's a lot of detail in that one. Okay, now, are there any other general comments that didn't fit into anything we've already covered? Yes,
The question on maps or
no, you can go ahead, that's,
looking at the proposed land use. The existing land use. Differences I noticed was. The existing land use map actually shows agricultural forestry lands. That aspect is gone in the proposed land use. So part of the goals plan agriculture or using your resources. I don't know if there's a way to show it, but we don't have an inventory of, farmland, hay fields, and the existing map does show it. It's not there in the proposed one. I don't know if there's a way or feel we should reflect that.
let me ask Matt, did you have something, because you're the map guy on this?
Yeah. Looking at this, just use that next. Which I can't say. But I think the forest and land, these are all either in the constitution.
both of those districts in plan, agriculture being one of the pieces. The town wants to support, in those districts, especially. Yeah. So I think. One of the challenges is. Generally you don't see, so the proposed land use map supports your zoning. Generally you don't see specific district for agricultural uses, some towns have agricultural overlay districts. Areas that prime agriculture. That's not something you go with currently. I think there's generally, those forest lands and agricultural lands are falling in proposed land use.
Yeah.
We use different terminology. In agricultural districts. It's the productive district. And so that's part of the larger size. Wait.
Okay, thanks. Are there any other general questions or comments that didn't fit in anything?
We have myself Thursday.
Yeah, yes. If you have any other things that you think about after you leave or anything else, yeah, sure. Yeah. Any other questions or comments? Okay, great. And we will adjourn the public hearing portion of the program and move into the planning commission discussion on changes and the process forward through the changes. Anyone is welcome to stay. It's an open meeting, so you're welcome to stay, but this is more of a functional meeting for discussion. So thank you all.